Howdy, I'm here at Maker Faire to film my friend Science Bob from my Redwood video, do a cool show. I'm not a maker, and I'm also not very fair, but this place is so full of cool art that I feel like I have something to talk about everywhere that I look. So let's talk about it. Now, I'm an artist, but my medium is usually digital, like editing this video or making this music you're listening to. But the people at Maker Faire specialize in, well, making things. Physical things. Stuff that wants to be interacted with. Like these weirdos. Look at them. You like move their arms and stuff. He looks just like me, doesn't he? But that's just how it is at showcases like Maker Faire, right at the intersection of science and art. Here, I see my interests reflected back at me in the creations of like-minded people. But it's not all art, of course. There's also people trying to sell their inventions. Like these Cupcake Cars I kept seeing driving around, which I obviously had to try out. It's just like a literal scooter in here, isn't it? And these were originally designed for middle schoolers, with just enough space to duck down into the protective shell. Oh yeah, look at that. And then, of course, to plug up the hole, a hat. Look at me, I'm a cupcake. Whoops. But those weren't the only vehicles here. I also spotted this beauty.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious
That's a DeLorean. And this is Lucien, my friend and inventor of this bubble robot.
BubbleBot is pretty cool. It just shoots out bubbles on a near circular basis, and its goal is to shoot out basically 3 bubbles per minute. It's been
BPM bubbles per minute.
BPM all the way. It's actually kind of hard science to pull off. There's like different recipes people recommend.
This can include soap additives, sugar, glycerin, and veterinary grade mechanical lubricants, whatever those are.
For me, it's taken 3 months to get where I'm at with it. Yeah, I'm still working on it, honestly. Getting the mixture right is like a common question and issue to address.
The thickness is also reliant on the fan, right? Because the fan has to be powerful enough that it'll blow a bubble and not break the bubble, right?
Yeah, it's a challenge because the fan has to be a kind of more ambient wind source, so there's not too much direct turbulence on the film of the bubble, causing it to rupture or just like do too much work. The larger the fan, the better, the more like light it is, and then of course you've got to have wind flow and also wind isolation, which is the reason for this somewhat trashy carport that's holding it in place.
God, have you thought about putting googly eyes on?
Oh, that would be so much more fun. That would be great.
Well, just like back in my octopus video, I caught the interview bug, so I guess I need to go talk to some more people. After a quick stop for a musical interlude. Now, right across the way from that guy is this guy, and this guy, Quentin, aka 2/3 of the band Pony Trap.
It is, as you saw, the drummer in my band, right? I'm not really like a tinkerer per se. I just needed to solve this problem. The music that I play has been sort of a lifelong pursuit for me. I learned viola to do it, and then the funny thing about that is like I sort of walked backwards into like being a university trained classical player. All this time I've been trying to make that music happen. And the last time I tried with a person, it just didn't go well. And I spent my kind of final concert with a human drummer like imagining building a machine. I'm not an engineer, right? Like I'm a musician.
You're like an artist as opposed to a scientist, but you're taking science and doing art with it now.
There you go, exactly. Yeah. I've been doing this about 12 years.
And it's been Pony Trap this entire time, or?
Yeah, the name for the band was Pony Trap even long before the robot.
What's the inspiration for the name?
It's a little bit of an inside joke. I like that it sounds kind of mean because the music I do is all industrial.
Okay,
But the joke of it is like, you know how the sort of ultimate dream of every kid is to get a pony, right? I want a pony. And then so the inside joke of it is like, I'm gonna trap my ponies with my band.
Well, it's funny because like you say that like all kids want a pony, but then a pony does become a trap, right? Because ponies grow up. You gotta take care of this expensive animal.
And the whole time I had this idea that I wanted to be right hand, left hand.
Okay,
but I didn't want to make a human.
Right, yeah.
But
you did an okay job.
Like what I don't want is like C-3PO behind a drum kit, right?
Like the animatronic band at Chuck E. Cheese or whatever.
Although when I was first starting, like I went to a robot club, and I was like, hey, I kind of want to make the Chuck E. Cheese band. And this one guy, this is amazing. He was like, hang on. He ran out to his car and he came back with a set of eyeballs. And it turns out the guy I'd made that joke to had been the like mechanic for the Chuck E. Cheese.
Really?
Yeah, for like years.
That's so funny.
It was just a beautiful, like wacky little moment.
I think this guy is like trying to talk to you though. And we had to cut our chat a little short because people were eager to see the next show. So Quentin set his drummer to playing a classic drum song.
Wipeout.
But something I found fascinating about Quentin's setup was that he doesn't use MIDI like you might expect. Instead, he uses a custom software running on an 8-year-old Arduino, which converts his music notation software's save files into an ASCII file. Then it reads it like a drummer would normal notation.
That's what it does.
And over the course of the day, Ponytrap's performances would draw in quite the crowd, just like the TNA booth, where my new friend Jenny introduced me to my next interviewee, the man himself,
Shawn Thorson.
If I seem caught off guard in this interview, it's because I only thought I was talking to the person in charge of the booth, not the reason for the booth's existence. But I did 5 years of improv, so yes and. And you are in charge of Thorson and Associates.
As much as they'll let me be, yeah.
Now, how long have you guys been around?
Well, I quit my day job in 2010, I guess, so it's pretty much been my main gig for 14 plus years. Somewhere along the way, it got too busy for me to handle my workload by myself, so I've started picking up more folks along the way.
Like all these folks?
Yes.
How did you get started on this?
It's a hobby that got out of hand. I was getting excited about Halloween, having a grown-up paycheck, and being able to do whatever I want. I kind of dove in hard, and each year was something more elaborate and more expensive. For too long, I made an entire squad of Halo Spartans for 1 year.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Become somewhat silly over the years.
You guys did something recently for the Fallout TV show.
Yeah, we did a bunch of stuff for Fallout. We did a set of the T-60 armor. So we had a 7-foot tall power armor suit that was wearable and walking around and that sort of thing. And then over the course of the production for season 1, they hit us up for a lot of things. So like if you saw the very last scene, the very last shot, and the very last episode, spoiler alert, there's a Deathclaw skull sitting out in the desert.
And that's it.
Yeah, well, it's not one of the one that was in front of the camera. Right. They asked us for 2, we made 4. This is one of the ones that we didn't send. We did that. We did the helmets that the vertibird pilots are wearing. So every time you see one of those tilt rotor aircraft and they show you in the cockpit, the pilots are wearing helmets we made. There's one episode where it starts off with a couple of guys in NCR Ranger gear. We made all the armor and helmets for those guys. So yeah, there's a lot of that sort of thing that comes up in the course of that series where it's like we did a screening and everybody spent the entire binge watching session for the whole season going, that's us, this was us, that was us. So it was a lot of fun.
And honestly, that would be the best thing about working on a movie, right? Is like, oh, I shot that shot. Oh, I designed that prop. Yeah,
it's a lot of good stuff.
What's like probably your favorite thing you've done?
It's weird because it starts spinning through a whole series of image of things that I've done, and like usually it's really easy to pick out the thing that I dislike the most, and that's pretty much whatever's closest to done right now. So it's like, I hate it, it's not good enough, there's got to be something better. And then once I've been away from it and I get a chance to look 2 years later and it's like, oh hey, I guess we did all right. Like this project was worth bragging about. I made a group of Sith Acolyte costumes from the Old Republic video game. 5 of them all together. It was a mad rush getting ready for a convention. We went, we did the thing, we took some pictures, and I put it all in a box and was just angry. So 2 years later, I'm walking into a convention hall and I see some guy come out of the convention hall and he's dressed as a Sith Acolyte, and it was sinister, it was menacing, it was hunched over, like it was intimidating to see this guy just stalking along. And I kind of watched him go by and my jaw fell open a little bit, and one of my friends says, hey, are you all right? I said, man, I don't know who built that, but somebody hit that Sith Acolyte out of the park. That thing was gorgeous. And they said, yeah, that was Jesse, you built that. I was like, okay, all right, I'll go take a look at maybe wearing mine again. Like that was, it was interesting. Someone told me years ago, you can't call it art unless there's a chance of total and complete catastrophic failure. And I very much feel that every time I'm getting up towards a deadline where it's like, yeah, really wish we'd have done all the other things we talked about at the beginning. You get across the finish line, the triage happens, everything that matters gets done, and the end result, after I've gotten a chance to get away from it a bit, is actually a lot of stuff I'm really proud of.
And you should be proud of all this stuff. This is so cool.
Thank you.
After my interview, the Foundry really started to fill up as people gathered for Adam Savage's big speech.
Good morning, Major Faire.
I mean, what, like, am I gonna leave? No, and I'm glad I stayed.
It is so good to see you all. What I want to talk to you about is something I've been sort of mulling in my head, and I thought instead of trying to outline it, I'm just gonna download it to you. I was reading McCullough's biography of the Wright brothers. I'm reading through their childhood. They have this very interesting dad and mom who require them to argue their points, and they have a reference library in the house, and the kids and the parents have a structure in which they argue their points back and forth to each other using logic. The parents' minds can be changed.
And we're gonna be talking about that in an upcoming video. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to know when it drops. And now back to Adam.
Wilbur was born in 1867, exactly 100 years before I was born. And so now when I'm looking at the years he's starting stuff, they all track with my youth, because they're the same last two numbers. And it starts to give me this interesting perspective on them. There's this point at which the Wright brothers have learned to fly. They've tried to sell their airplane to the US government, who doesn't believe that they can fly. So they go to France and they're like, would you like our plane? And France is like, oui. And it's the biggest news in France. He's in this warehouse, like imagine a warehouse this big, and Orville is in the middle of it working on this plane, slowly retying and fixing every little thing. And he's doing this for like 40 straight days, all day long, every day. And while he's doing this, like 10,000 people every day are arriving outside the warehouse, and they're all standing and looking in the windows and watching him. And I feel a little connection to this. There's no part of this that has me trying to equate myself with the Wright brothers, not at all. They are bizarro gods. But that connection helps me isolate some of the personalities involved.
And it was during Adam's speech that I really feel like I started to understand Maker Faire and what it was all about.
That place at the bench where we find that support, I feel like that's where we become people. That's where we become human beings. It's where I've learned empathy. It's where I've learned empathy specifically for myself. More than almost anything else is realizing that internal monologue is not telling you the truth about yourself. I heard a lovely thing that the first thought that comes through from your internal monologue is the one you learned from your parents, and the second thought that comes through is the one you figured out on your own. I really like that.
With that in mind, I set out to explore Maker Faire with a new understanding of what it was all about. Yes, making things, but also the learning process in general, and the drive to keep trying when at first you don't succeed. The Kennedy Moon speech and whatnot. The people at Maker Faire don't just slap something together because it's easy,
but because they are hard.
And as an artist, I can relate. There's a lot of scary stuff happening in the world right now, and that's why it's more important than ever that we independently seek out knowledge to create world-scale solutions to world-scale problems. Clearly, our leaders and the institutions aren't going to help us, so as they say, we need to be the change that we want to see in the world. Despite living in a time of unprecedented social and technological progress, sometimes it also feels like we're moving in reverse at the same time, like a snake eating itself. And going to Maker Faire was a great reminder that where there are problems, people will always find solutions, no matter how many times they fail and need to start from scratch. So here's a few of my favorite things I saw at Maker Faire, including the Epibirds boys and their world-famous Mentos and Coke show, this spider bot, and the LED room, which featured this giant cuttlefish float that Bob may or may not get to ride later. Which reminds me, I'm supposed to be working. Indeed, it was almost time for Science Bob's show, and I needed to get all my cameras in place, and then I had a front row seat to the greatest science showman on daytime television. And Bob was pulling out all of his best hits. Elephant toothpaste, Pringles cans, balloon pops, and Bob, don't do it! That's right, Bob had a little surprise volunteer planted in the crowd who came up to help him with his liquid nitrogen show.
I never get picked for these things!
So if you want to see Bob do more wild experiments just like this, go check out the CrunchLabs YouTube page where he and Mark get up to all kinds of shenanigans. Yeah, just like that. And Bob wasn't finished. After that, he hopped aboard the giant cuttlefish to launch off a few Fat Gus plushies to the teeming maw of children. And now I want to tell you about the reason Bob was even here, and thus the reason I was here. That's right, the CrunchLabs booth. Not only did it feature Bob signing autographs and doing photos, but there was this awesome fidget spinner making station where folks could make their own fidget spinner and learn all about ball bearings, like a mini version of what they get to do in a CrunchLabs Build Box subscription, which features a toy in the mail every month that kids get to put together and watch an exclusive video where Mark teaches them the science behind the toy. If that sounds like something your kids would enjoy, go to crunchlabs.com or follow the link in the description, and thanks for watching.